Classified Crime is on the case of Sarah Boone, and today we're going to go over her August call logs. Right, we're going to get started with the August call logs. This month, she has her family court hearing. Her son goes back to school mid-August, so there's a first day of school. There are 2 collect calls in this month, and she also tries to reach out to Cristina and Cristina's mother and brother. Now, I'm going to briefly go over, this is the chart that shows you the total talk time and the total amount of calls from January through July. These are all the people that she often calls. So Julian and Peter, the first 2 here, they run a nonprofit apparently, and they reached out to Sarah while she was in Orange County Jail about doing a documentary about her. Snoopy, why are you always trying to get in these videos? Just kidding. Snoopy's the real star. And so they reached out to her about doing a documentary, but instead of doing a documentary, they ended up doing all of her legal work without a law license. Brian is her ex-husband and her son's father. Of course, her son is self-explanatory, as is her brother. Nicole is another pen pal that supposedly lives in Australia and just reached out to her in the Orange County Jail. John is someone she only called during the month of June, and he quit accepting her calls, and I'm not sure how he knows her. Billy Lane was her investigator during her criminal trial. She did reach out to him during the month of June regarding some issues with her appeal. David and his wife are old friends of hers who I think took her 2 dogs when she was arrested. She calls them once or twice a month. It seems like they schedule their calls and they talk to her for 30 minutes, once a month or every other month. Lana also reached out to her while she was in Orange County Jail and did a lot of phone calls and research for her. Lana passed away earlier in the year, and they also had a falling out. Cristina was an inmate at Orange County Jail, and Cristina also came to her sentencing as a character witness and spoke on her behalf at the sentencing. Lana also called in and spoke on her behalf as well. So that's everyone on the call logs so far. Now we will see 2 people who are related to Cristina that she tries to reach out to, even though Cristina has not taken any of her calls since she's gotten to prison. All right, so starting off August 1st is a Friday, and I did separate the days with these light blue lines and marked free calls in green to the right. So she starts off August 1st calling Nicole at 8:53, 8:55, 8:58. None of those calls were accepted. She tried her again at 9:16 in the morning, and they spoke for exactly 30 minutes. She then tried her son at 15:21 and 15:23. Then Brian at 15:25, then her son again at 18:39. None of those were accepted. She then tried Nicole again at 18:39. She did not accept. She called Brian again at 18:41. He did not accept. But then she tried her son again at 18:43, and they spoke for just under 30 minutes. That was all on the 1st. Moving on to Saturday, the 2nd of August, she called Nicole twice at 9:55 and 9:57. Those were not accepted. She called Brian at 9:59. He did not accept. She then called Nicole 2 more times at 10:01 and 10:09 a.m. They were not accepted. She called Brian again at 10:14. He did not accept. She called Nicole at 10:16. She did not accept. And then she called her son at 15:24, and he did not accept. Keep in mind that Nicole has quite a bit of a time difference. So if she's calling her at 10 in the morning, it should be around 1 a.m. in Australia the next day. All right, she then called her son again. So she called him at 15:24. Then she called him again at 15:24 and then 15:25. So 3 calls in a row to her son that were all not accepted. So nobody really took her calls on the 2nd. On the 3rd, she made quite a few phone calls. So this whole page all the way up to here, she made a lot of phone calls on the 3rd, which would have been a Sunday. So she starts with her son twice. She calls him at 9:37, 2 times. Both were not accepted. She called Nicole at 9:39 and 9:41. Those were not accepted. She called Brian at 9:44. And then she called Nicole at 9:46. Then she called her son at 10:50 and Brian at 10:51. None of that was accepted. She then called Nicole at 10:53 and 10:56. Those were not accepted. She tried her son at 10:58. That was not accepted. And then she waited till a few more hours and she called her son at 13:19 and 13:21. Neither one of those were accepted. She tried Nicole at 13:23 and that was not accepted. She then tried her son at 13:44 and that was not accepted. Then she called Peter twice at 1400. They spoke for about 30 minutes. At 15:07, they spoke for about 30 minutes. Once you complete a call, it does lock you out from making another call for a set amount of time. I think it's about an hour, half an hour to an hour. So she called Peter at 1400 and then 15:07, and they spoke for 30 minutes each. And then she called David, and that was at 16:53, and they spoke for exactly 30 minutes until the time was up. And continuing on the 3rd, she called Peter again at 18:41. They spoke for 22 minutes, 58 seconds. She then tried her son at 19:33 and 19:35, and then Brian at 19:37. None of those were accepted. She then tried Nicole at 19:39, and that was not accepted. And then she called her son at 19:41, and they spoke for about 15 minutes. On the 4th, she tries Nicole 5 times in a row at 8:47, 8:49, 9:34, 9:35, and 9:42. None of those were accepted. She then called her son 7 times. She started at 1800, which would be 6 p.m., and that was not accepted. And then at 18:02, they spoke for just under 5 minutes. That was a free call. Free call limit is 5 minutes. Then she called her son again at 18:37, 18:39, 18:41, 18:49, and 20:49. None of those were accepted. On the 5th, she called Nicole 3 times in a row at 8:44 a.m., 8:46, and 10:06. The first 2 calls were not accepted. The 3rd call at 10:06, they spoke for about 10 minutes. She then called Nicole again at 11:30, and they spoke for 18 minutes. So the only person she called on the 5th was Nicole, and she called her 4 times, and they spoke 2 of those times. On the 6th of August, she tries Nicole and her son. That's the only people she tries to call. Nicole, she called at 9:07, 9:09, 9:28, 9:31, 10:24, 10:26, 11:34, 13:11, and 13:13. None of those calls were accepted. She then called her son at 13:15, and they connected for 22 seconds. She then called her son at 14:41. So you can see it's like an hour after a call time that she was able to make another call. She called her son at 14:41, 14:43, 18:15, and 18:17. The first 3 calls he did not answer, or it was not accepted. And then at 18:17, they spoke for 19 minutes. On the 7th, she called Nicole twice at 13:33 and 13:35, and both of those were not accepted. She then called Peter at 13:53, and they spoke for just under 30 minutes. She then tried her son at 17:49 and 17:50, and both of those were not accepted. Then she called Brian twice at 17:51 and 17:53. Both were not accepted. She then called her son at 18:12 and 18:14. Both were not accepted. She called her son and Peter. She called Peter once and her son 4 times. So the first call she made to her son was 15:05. They connected for 25 seconds. She then called Peter at 15:07, and that was not accepted. She then called her son again at 15:33, and he did not accept. At 15:35, she spoke to her son for about 14 minutes, and then at 19:42, she spoke to her son for 1 minute, 45 seconds. On the 9th, she started out trying to call her son at 11:20. It was not accepted. 11:22, she called Brian. It was not accepted. 11:24, she tried her son, not accepted. 11:26, she tried Brian, not accepted. 15:20, she tried her son, and they spoke for 3 minutes, 42 seconds. On the 10th, her son, she tried calling at 9:34 in the morning. He did not accept. Then she tried Brian at 9:36. He did not accept. Then she tried her son again at 9:38, and he did not accept. She then tried Nicole twice at 10:21 and 10:22 in the morning here, and those were not accepted. She then tried her son at 10:25 and 10:59. At 10:25, it does show a 1 second connection, but she may have just not, I'm not sure. And then he did not accept this call at 10:59. She then tried Brian at 11:01 and her son at 11:03, and those were not accepted. But then she tried her son at 13:55, and they spoke for 21 minutes, 36 seconds. She tried Peter at 16:36 and at 17:20. Both of those were not accepted. She tried her son at 17:57 and 17:59. Those were not accepted. She then called her son again at 18:41, and they spoke for 23 minutes, 52 seconds. And then she tried Peter again at 19:42, and that was not accepted. All of those were on August 10th. On the 11th, she started with her son. The 11th is, I looked up the district that they live in. This would have been the first day of school on the 11th. So she tried her son at 8:40 in the morning, which I would think he would already be at school by 8:40. And then she tried Brian at 8:42. Both of those calls were not accepted. Also, even if he wasn't at school yet, he probably would have to be within the next 20 minutes or so. And busy school mornings, especially the first day of school, you don't have time for a lengthy phone call in the morning. I don't. So 8:40 and 8:42, those were not accepted. She tried Nicole at 8:44. That was not accepted. She then tried Peter 3 times at 10:10, 15:20, and 15:21. He did not accept any of those calls. She then called her son at 15:38. That would have been about 3:38 in the afternoon. He would have maybe been home from school by then. They did speak for 4.5 minutes. Peter, she then called at 17:50. He did not accept. She then tried her son at 18:46, and they spoke for just under 30 minutes. Then she called him again at 19:37, and that was not accepted. This yellow call is to her son, and it was a collect call. She called him collect, and it was not accepted. So after she already spoke to him twice, and it's the first day of school, she called him collect after he didn't answer the second call. It also says pin lockout. I'm not sure what that means. I found that appalling that she called her son collect on the first day of school after already talking to him for 35 minutes, and that's a very busy, exhausting day. Continuing on the 11th, after the collect call, she tried her son 4 more times. So the collect call was at 19:40. She then tried her son at 19:41, 19:43, and 19:45. None of those were accepted. And then she called him at 19:46, and they spoke for 9 minutes. So they spoke for about 40 to, 45 minutes roughly that day on the first day of school. On the 12th, she tried Nicole at 10:39. They spoke for just under 30 minutes. She tried Peter at 15:30. He did not accept. She tried Peter again at 16:52, and they spoke for just under 30 minutes. And then she called her son at 18:17. This would have been the second day of school, and they spoke for just under 29 minutes. On the 13th, she called her son twice. They spoke for 1 minute. He did not accept the first call at 17:57, and the call at 17:59. It said they had 1 minute, and then time was up. So I'm assuming time up means that was the last time she had left on her prepaid for him. On the 14th, she calls Brian. This is a free call at 10:08 and 10:10. He did not accept. She called Nicole at 10:12 and 10:14. Nicole did not accept. She tried Brian again at 10:16. He did not accept. She tried Peter at 14:44 and Peter did not accept. She tried Brian again at 14:45 and Brian did not accept. And then she spoke to her son at 17:46 for exactly 30 minutes until time was up. That was on the 14th. On the 15th, this would have been Friday, she called Nicole at 9:06 and 9:08. Those were not accepted. She then called her son up here at 18:54 and they spoke for just under 30 minutes. Then on the 16th, she tried her son at 10:59. So this would be Saturday. It was not accepted. She then tried Nicole at 11:01 and they spoke for just under 23 minutes. She tried her son at 16:55. Remember, he's just had the first week of school, so he's probably tired. Let's see, 16:55, it was not accepted. 16:57, they spoke for 55 seconds. And then at 1800, they spoke for exactly 30 minutes until time was up. On the 17th, this would have been Sunday, I believe, she made quite a few calls. So the rest of this page is all Sunday, the 17th. So she starts at 9:33 in the morning. She calls her son at 9:33, 9:58, 10 a.m., and 10:53 a.m. None of those calls were accepted. She then called her brother 4 times, and he didn't accept any of those calls. She started calling him at 12:47, 12:49, 14:16, and 14:18. He did not accept any of those. She then called her son at 14:20. That was not accepted. Now she calls someone named Veronica. This number came back to a Veronica May, and she has a different last name now, but she had a previous last name of Pena. And this call was not accepted. She tried it at 14:32. This, I believe, is Christina's mother, because Cristina, her former inmate from Orange County, was called shortly after this. And Christina's middle name is also May. So it's Cristina May and Veronica May. So she tried calling Christina's mother. It was not accepted. She tried someone named Sheila. I don't know who that is. And then she tried someone named Jennifer. I don't know who that is. And then she tried someone named Danielle. Danielle, I think, is on her visitor sheet, but I don't really know who she is or how they know each other. Jennifer and Danielle did not accept her calls. She then tried an Alex Pena, who I think is Christina's brother. That was not accepted. And then she tried Cristina, and that was also not accepted. So all of those were around 2:30 in the afternoon when she started calling Christina's family. She then tried her brother on the 17th at 16:49. That was not accepted. She called him again at 17:39. That was not accepted. She tried her son at 17:41 and Brian at 17:43. Those were not accepted. She tried her son again at 19:02 and it was not accepted. She then called her brother at 19:04 and they spoke for 18 minutes, 43 seconds. She tried her son again after that call at 19:37. So that looks like about 30 minutes after her completed call to her brother. She called her son at 19:37. It was not accepted, and it says pin lockout again. Then she called her son at 20:46, and they spoke for just about 15 minutes on the 17th. Now we're back to Monday the 18th, so her son would be back in school now. She tried Peter at 10:03 and 10:04. Those were not accepted. She tried Nicole at 10:05. It was not accepted. She tried Peter again at 10:28. Not accepted. Then Nicole at 10:29. Not accepted. She then tried Peter at 10:31 and that was not accepted. She tried Nicole at 10:32 and they spoke for just under 5 minutes. Then she tried Peter at 11:02 and that was not accepted. The first call she made to Nicole was free, so I think that's why it's less than 5 minutes. Now, this one to Peter says pin lockout again, even though it wasn't answered. So I'm not sure why. Peter, she then tried to call collect after the pin lockout, which is what she did with her son. She tried him collect at 11:04. He did not accept that. She then tried him again at 11:04, and it says pin lockout again, and that was no duration of that call. She tried Nicole at 11:05. It was not accepted. She tried Peter at 11:07. It was not accepted. Now, Monday the 18th, keep in mind a week from that day would be Monday the 25th, which was her family court hearing. So she's probably trying to get them to help her with her case. All right, then continuing on the 18th, we have Nicole at 11:09, and that was just under 30 minutes that they spoke. She then tried her son at 18:07, 18:09, and 18:59. None of those were accepted. Now, this is the red box here up in the top is the day she had her court hearing. It was at 1 p.m. So I marked that. The previous, this yellow arrow, I wrote she did not call her son all week because if you remember in court, Brian was mentioning how sometimes her son is upset after talking with her or after calls with her. And she asked him when was the last time he was upset. And Brian said probably last week and mentioned that she did not call him. And then she mentioned her job. So let's take a look at, I'll try to find that clip and insert it here. And then let's take a look at her job assignments too.
I don't think you need 7-8 phone calls a week. It's ridiculous.
Is that due to payment or because it's harmful to speak to him that many times?
Both.
How is that harmful?
Once again, I see him very upset at the way you talk to him all the time after phone calls.
When was the last time he was upset?
Probably about a week ago because you didn't call all last week.
Do you know my schedule of work when I'm located at DOC?
No, of course I don't.
This is a summary of her job assignments since she's been at the women's prison. So she entered December 30th and was in orientation until February 6th. She was assigned to houseman, which is general cleaning responsibilities. On the 27th, she was assigned to clerk of education. On the 4th of April, she then was unassigned. And then on the 10th of April, she was back to houseman. Then she had a period of time on June 13th through the 18th where she was unassigned and then went back to houseman on the 18th. Some people were saying she could have been in the infirmary or something like that because of the coding of Z on that assignment. And then on August 7th, she got assigned to laundry. So I received this on October 8th. So between August 7th to October 8th, she's been in laundry. So I don't know what her schedule is for doing the laundry or what that has to do with why she can't call for a week. But she had been on this job assignment since the 7th of August. On the 11th of August, she was able to call him all during the first day of school. So I don't really know what the schedule is for doing laundry, but that's her job assignment. And this is what she's referencing. All right, so that's just a little bit of context for you. Picking back up on the 19th, we have, this is Tuesday the 19th, Nicole at 10:33 in the morning. They spoke for just under 30 minutes. She then called her brother at 14:02 and they spoke for 16 minutes. She then tried Peter at 15:43 and that was not accepted. Those are the only 3 calls she made on the 19th. On the 20th, she tried Nicole multiple times. So it looks like 5 times she tried Nicole, none were accepted. She tried her at 8:49 in the morning, 8:56, 10:13, 10:15, and 10:38 a.m. They were all free courtesy marketing calls and none were accepted. Then she tried Nicole on the 21st at 9:24. It was not accepted. She tried Nicole twice on the 22nd at 9:28 and 9:36 in the morning. Those were not accepted. She then tried Nicole on the 23rd. This is 2 days before her court hearing. That was at 10:06 in the morning and they spoke for just under 30 minutes. So that's what Brian was referencing when he said she did not call their son all week. So she spoke to him on the 18th and she didn't speak to him from the 19th through 24th. She did call him from the 19th through the 23rd. She did call him on the 24th and they spoke for 28 and a half minutes at 17:51 in the evening. And that was the night before they went to court. So she did speak to her son just under 30 minutes the night before court. The next day is the 25th. This is the day of her court at 1 p.m. She called Nicole 3 times, 9:38, 9:55, and 10:19 a.m. She spoke to Nicole just under 5 minutes for her free call at 9:38. Nicole did not answer at 9:55. It says pin lockout. And then she spoke to her at 10:19 for 25 minutes, 19 seconds. All right, this is continuing on the court hearing. She called Nicole again at 11:34, and that was no call duration, but it says the caller hung up. She then tried her son after the court hearing. The court hearing was at 1, not exactly what time it ended, but by 17:31, which is 5:31 p.m., she called her son multiple times. He did not answer any of them. She tried him at 17:31, 17:33, 17:37, 18:38, and 18:40. He did not answer any of those calls. But it's interesting that she didn't call him all week leading up to the hearing until the night before the hearing, and then she called him 5 times after the hearing. On the 26th, she called Nicole at 11:14 a.m. and they spoke for exactly 30 minutes. She then tried her son 4 times at 16:45, 17:21, and 17:23. None of those were accepted. At 19:04, they spoke for just under 30 minutes. On the 27th, she started with Nicole at 10:29 a.m. They spoke for just exactly 30 minutes until time was up. She then called her brother twice at 14:20 and 14:22. Those were not accepted. She then tried Peter at 17:24 and they spoke for 29 minutes. She called Peter again at 18:10 and it says pin lockout. She called him at 18:21 and it says pin lockout. So I think maybe pin lockout is because she had the completed call at 17:24 and she hasn't waited the complete hour to make another call. That might be what pin lockout is. Then Peter, 18:22, not accepted. 18:24, not accepted. She tried her son at 18:29, not accepted. She then tried Peter at 18:31 and they spoke for 15 and a half minutes. The next day on 8:28, she called Nicole twice at 10:55 and 10:59. Those were not accepted. She then called her son twice, 18:54 and 18:57. They were not accepted. She then called Peter at 18:58. It was not accepted. And then her son at 19:09 and it was not accepted. On the 29th, she called her son at 16:48 and 16:50 and 18:06. None of those were accepted. She then tried Brian at 18:08, then her son at 18:10, at 19:23, and at 19:26. Those were not accepted. Then she tried her son again at 20:38 and 20:40. Those were not accepted. On the 30th, she tried Nicole at 10:36 a.m. and they spoke for 18 minutes, 46 seconds. She then called her son 4 times, 11:09, 11:21, 11:22, and 11:23. None of those were accepted. She then called her son again at 11:25. That was not accepted. Then she tried Brian twice, one at 11:27, which was not accepted. At 11:29, she did get in touch with Brian for 1 minute, 25 seconds. And then it says inmate hung up. So she might have left him a voicemail about not answering. She then called her son at 13:45 and 13:47. Those were not accepted. She called her brother at 13:51. That was not accepted. She tried Sheila again. Again, I'm not sure who Sheila is. That's just who the number came back to. She tried them at 13:53. That was not accepted. She then tried Veronica, Christina's mother, again at 13:55, and that was not accepted. She tried her son at 13:57, 15:03, 15:05, and 16:32. Those were not accepted. She then called Brian at 16:34 and they connected for 3 minutes, 57 seconds. And then it says inmate hung up. So I'm wondering if that was another voicemail. Probably really not a nice voicemail. And that's the end of August. The next one starts on September 1st with a free call to Nicole for 4 minutes. So I will start that video next. Hopefully we will have a ruling from Judge Jackson somewhere in the meantime. And let's look at call totals for the month of August. Okay, so Julian, she did not call during August at all. Peter, she attempted 31 calls. He accepted 7 calls, 23% acceptance rate. Her brother, she called 11 times. He accepted 2 calls for 18% acceptance. Brian, she called 23 times. He accepted 2 of them, but it was short duration, and I think it was just her leaving voicemails and not really him accepting them for 9%. Her son, she attempted 112 times during the month of August alone. 112 phone calls during the month of August. I don't know that I would have 112 text messages in a month to someone, but I don't know. He accepted 24 of those calls for a 20% acceptance rate. Nicole, she attempted 68 calls. 12 were accepted for 18%. David, her friend, she called once and he accepted that call. Again, I think they schedule those calls because he usually seems to accept her calls. Cristina, she attempted once. Alex, she attempted once. And Veronica, she attempted twice. None of those were accepted. I didn't include the other, the Sheila or the Danielle or the Jennifer, because I really don't know who they are, and she doesn't call them very frequently. And they also did not accept. Let's look at the call times. So in the first column, you'll see the August call attempts and calls accepted, like we just went over, and then the minute, the hour, minute, second duration. So she talked to Peter. Julian, she didn't talk to at all. Peter, she talked to for a total of 3 hours, 5 minutes, and 48 seconds. Brian, a total of 5 minutes, 22 seconds. Again, I'm speculating, but I think that was her leaving voicemails. Her son, she talked to for just over 6 hours the month of August. Her brother, just about half an hour. Nicole, 4 hours, 39 minutes, 9 seconds. And David, exactly 30 minutes. All the way to the right, there is a total from January through September. So Julian's talk time didn't really change from July's total because she didn't talk to him this month. Peter, she has a running total of 317 call attempts, 109 accepted for 38 hours, 52 minutes, and 56 seconds of talk time since she's been at Lowell. Brian, she has talked to for a total of 3 hours, 46 minutes, 48 seconds. Her son, she's attempted to call 424 times from January through September. He's accepted 128 of those calls. They have a total talk time of 38 hours, 17 minutes, and 30 seconds, just slightly less than her and Peter. Her brother, she spoke to for 2.5 hours roughly. Nicole, 31 hours, 36 minutes, 43 seconds. And David, 2 hours, 5 minutes. Cristina, no talk time. I don't know why she continues to try to call her and is not getting the hint. So these are the totals. Hopefully you have enjoyed this data analysis. I'm hoping to do another live soon, and I'm hoping to cover the ruling of Judge Jackson if we can ever get that. But in the meantime, I will see you all in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.